Hello everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have my 10 card 1 kit video featuring our new Polar Express Deluxe card kit. I know this video is a little bit late. I'll kind of explain why when I have some open time while I'm creating my 10 cards. But if you do want to see everything that's included in the kit, I do have a full unboxing video along with even more inspiration. So I definitely recommend to watch that video first before this one because I break down everything included in the kit in real time, and I just felt like that was a better unboxing than what I originally had for this video, which was very sped up. And as you can see, this video is already super long, so definitely check that out first and then come back to this. I will have it linked in the eye and in the video description. So for my first card, I'm going to use the new Polar Express ticket die. You can see for the base, I went with some gold and yellows. And for these detail panels, I chose the gold Polar Express text background. And as you can see, this creates a beautiful 5x7 tag that would look great on your presents, but I will turn it into a card. I did end up using every single die from that Polar Express ticket die, and now I'm just going to paper piece the front-facing train that's included. And while I paper piece, I'll explain why this video is out a little bit later than planned. So we launched the Polar Express 2 days before we ended up driving all the way to California for some craft shows. And this video just took a lot longer to edit, so I had it fully edited while I was in California, and I just never got around to doing the voiceover for it. So I'm back now, and I'm going to try my best to post this video before I start posting sneak peek lives of our new Christmas tunnel collection. So I know some of you are waiting on this, but I do have a couple sneak peek lives featuring this card kit if you're looking for tutorials on the train pop-ups. I actually will only show an ornament in this 10 card 1 kit video, and if you are looking for a train and caboose pop-up tutorial, I do suggest my YouTube live video. I will be sure to link it. So most of my cards are flat designs, but many of them can kind of transform into a pop-up. Also, the winner of the Polar Express Deluxe card kit, I'm going to leave in the comment section of this video, and I will also tag the winner. And you were entered into the giveaway if you left a comment on that product showcase video. And like I said, the winner is going to receive the entire Polar Express box. So check out the video description and the comment section to see if you won. So for this ticket, this was one of the first cards that I created, and I didn't want to think too much about colors or placement of all these word dies, so I actually copied the image on the back of the packaging. And so here I'm laying out all of my text. Now that banner at the bottom does have embossed text, and I'm going to show you a way that you can make that text stand out with a gel pen. I opted for a Stardust pen just because I feel like that's the best to not see any imperfections, because ultimately I am kind of tracing that embossed text and it's not going to be perfect, and I feel like a white gel pen would show that a little bit more than this Stardust pen, because you will only see the text with this pen if you tilt it in the light. And I have a couple of dies that are like this where the image is just too small to have a die cut word, so I have to make it embossed. So here you can see there's that sparkle pen, and you can read it perfectly well when it hits the light. You can do this with a white gel pen, and I've shown it also with a black fine liner. The finer your pen is, the easier it is to trace those embossed words. So now that everything is laid out, I'm going to glue everything together. And a lot of these words we used in our product showcase video on our pop-up trains, so you can get more use out of these words by combining them with some of the other elements from the card kit. I think they would look great with the stamp sets too. I really like that the majority of the text is red, but I did add the black to tie in the train and the pop of green along with the holly leaf and snowflakes to accent the empty space. You can't see it on camera here, but most of my elements are double or triple layered, especially the text. I just feel like that really makes them pop. When I go to trade shows, one of my most asked questions is what I'm using to make my die cuts look so thick. A lot of people are convinced that it's chipboard, but it's not. It really is that doubling and even tripling up of my die cuts that gives it that almost 3D sticker look. So I definitely think it's worth the extra time to do that, especially on a flat card design. I was actually kind of shocked how quickly I was making these cards because I'm so used to making 3 to 4 hour pop-up designs. And believe it or not, I actually struggle much more coming up with flat designs than I do 3D, just because I am typically a scene card maker, and I just love with a pop-up that I can utilize so much extra space to build a scene, whereas with a flat design, even a 5x7, I'm limited on real estate. But I had a lot of fun making these, and it kind of brought me back to how I originally started on YouTube, where I did a lot of 10 card 1 kit videos. I don't know why they've kind of died out on YouTube. They are a lot of work. I ended up spending about 3 days filming the video, and like I said, a very long time editing it. So I appreciate your patience as this video has been so delayed. But we are currently gearing up for our last launch of the year. So our next release is going to be focusing on a new pop-up series that we're starting. It began with the pop-up cathedral from our Halloween collection, and for Christmas we're going to have 4 new designs. 2 of them are year-round, kind of like the cathedral, and 2 are very Christmassy looking, and it's a beautiful release. The Polar Express box was definitely more on the cutesy side, and the Christmas Tunnel collection is more elegant. So we've already started prepping cards for the product showcase video. It's going to be launching next Wednesday, November 12th at 10 a.m. Eastern, and the showcase video will go up at 8 p.m. Eastern. We also have some sneak peek lives that are starting Friday, which is going to be November 7th, through Saturday and Sunday. So it's kind of like a weekend of sneak peeks. Our window of creating samples is a lot shorter than usual, so we're working very hard to try to have as many beautiful cards for that sample or for that showcase as possible. So definitely mark your calendars for Wednesday, and we'd love to have you join us for our sneak peeks this weekend. And I will be giving away some $25 gift cards to lucky winners in the live chat. So yeah, right now they're already scheduled on my YouTube channel, so you can hit the bell notification to be notified when that video officially goes live. So you can see that I went ahead and glued my ticket onto a green and white striped pattern paper from the kit, and now I'm just accenting the card with some white pearls. I also added those to the center of the snowflakes, and that pretty much finishes off my first card design. I didn't actually glue these onto card bases because I actually glue these flat card fronts directly onto my boards that I travel with for trade shows. So for cards 2 and 3, I'm going to start by just folding a piece of 80-pound red cardstock in half, and then I'm going to take the train pop-up die from the kit and line it up with the score line, but I'm going to overhang it off the score line so that I can create a train-shaped card base. I'm going to do the same thing with the caboose. So I have another piece of red cardstock, I'm folding it in half, and then I'm going to take the caboose base die, line it up with the crease of that cardstock, overhang it at the top a little bit, and die cut it. I also die cut from the same red cardstock just one caboose and one train that I'm going to glue on top of the card base. I usually go for 100-pound cardstock for my bases, but the train and the caboose didn't cut through 2 layers of 100 pounds, so that's why I opted for 80-pound. And now I'm gluing all of the details onto the solid train and caboose that I cut separately, and then these pieces I will glue onto the card base. You can make it thicker or more sturdy by also adding a train to the back of the base as well, but by the time everything was layered together, I thought the weight was perfectly fine. And like I said, these will be glued onto a board, so it really doesn't matter. Alright, and whenever I paper piece, I like to work with my largest items first and then work down to the smaller details. So you can see I kind of started with the light red accents, and then the next largest pieces were the tires and the windows. And I found it easier to just do the caboose and the train at the same time because I die cut them both together and in the same color scheme, so it just made sense to do them at the same time. I went for red, white, black, and silver, which is one of my favorite holiday color combos. So now I will add the silver rims. And like I said, there are dies in both the train and the caboose set that turn these into pop-up cards. And this design can be translated into a pop-up. In fact, that's what I would have done, but this was my second to last set of cards, and I just knew I wouldn't have enough time to decorate the front and the back. That's just what I prefer when I make it into a pop-up. I like when the back isn't as detailed as the front of the trains, but still looks nice on the back. And it would have added probably an extra hour that I just knew I didn't have. But I do love how these turned out, and if I have time later on in November, I might make a full train pop-up set. I also really like when I create the pop-ups to have 3 or 4 cabooses behind the train because they look great on like a mantle or in the center of a table as home decor. So I think for a flat design, it's cute to have just one caboose and have them side by side. You can put the caboose and the train in the same envelope and mail them together, and I think they're just going to be adorable on my board side by side. So I added the silver rims on the caboose and the snow on the top of the train. I'm going to use that same snow for the caboose also. I'm adding these silver details on the windows, and those windows perfectly coordinate with the new train passenger set also in the card kit. There are 4 characters you can put in those windows, which is really cute if you are decorating the train front and back as a pop-up. The wreath and the garland have 2 pieces, one that's solid, which will be the berries, and then one that cuts the berries out. So you can just glue those together, and the garland matches up with the right side of the train as well as the length of the caboose, so I will add a garland to the caboose as well. There's also a Merry Christmas sentiment that fits perfectly on the caboose that you can use instead. I went ahead and did a silver bill for the top of the train and some silver details. So now we're kind of getting down to the smaller pieces. For the horn, I don't know what that's called on the train, I did give it that light red stripe. I felt like it needed a little bit of light red in that section. The bows on the garland and the wreath have teeny tiny bells, so I cut those from silver and now I'm gluing them on top. I'm also going to glue some silver ornaments because why not? I love those teeny tiny details. Here's some more silver accents going on to the horn of the train. Please let me know what the name of that is in the comments down below. And we are almost done. I think we just need to add the light, some more snow, and for the caboose, you can add a stack of presents at the top, or the kit includes a tree with some lights. So that's another option you can go with. Or you can leave the caboose without anything inside. I think this would look good just as it is right now. So now I'm going to add a couple more ornaments to this garland. I'll add my light. Some more snow at the top. And I just think this is so cute. I'm even going to add the details to the center of the tires. Again, this is all optional. You really don't have to do all the pieces. But for me, I just love to see these come to life with the paper piecing. All right, so off camera, I created my Santa and elf. There will be a card later on where I show the paper piecing. But as I mentioned, the train passenger set has 4 different characters you can use. So along with the Santa and the elf, there's also a snowman and reindeer. I'm just using a fine liner to go over their eyeballs and their face details. I love that this elf is giving you a thumbs up from the train. All right, so my 2 decorated pieces are done, and all I really have to do is glue them onto the card base, but I do want to dress up my caboose. So from the same die set, there is this cluster of presents that you can add. So I die cut the base of it from white, and that bar across the bottom is where you would add your glue and tuck it behind the caboose. You can see my cat Maverick was joining me in the craft room today. I actually filmed this video at my mom's house and at my house, so that's why there's constantly some different lighting happening throughout the video. But the presents I cut from the same colored cardstock, keeping everything very cohesive. I think part of the reason why Christmas is my favorite time for creating cards is because I have a lot of go-to color combos and I don't have to overthink much when it comes to holiday and winter cards. I really love traditional Christmas color combos, and that's what I tend to stick to every year. Sometimes maybe 1 or 2 cards I'll go outside the usual color schemes, but I love when I can focus on the composition of the card and not quite as much on the colors. Here I'm adding all of the little tiny bows and details onto the packages. I will also use my fine liner to go over the teddy bear's face. There is even a detail for the plaid stripes on this package. I didn't end up liking the silver mirror. I probably was overthinking it for sure, but I'm going to glue a silver glitter package on top. I like with die cuts, you can just glue things on top if you don't like the way that it looks, whereas with coloring, you're kind of stuck with it unless you start all over. I'm even going to add the teeny tiny stripe details on that candy cane. And I did mention that this Polar Express box was a little bit cutesy, but I think this caboose definitely is more on the elegant side if you opt to use the stack of presents with it. All right, so that finishes off that image. Look how beautiful. I did use some specialty cardstocks on some of those presents. And that's another reason why I love Christmas cards so much is I pull out all the glitter and shimmer and mirror paper that I don't get to use as often for the rest of the year. All right, so now I'm going to add glue to that white bar at the bottom and tuck it behind my caboose. And isn't that just beautiful? I definitely would love to see this made as a pop-up and continue the line of cabooses with some of the other images from the kit. All right, so back to my card bases. I'm just going to cover the front entirely with glue and stick my decorated caboose on top. And that's pretty much it. I forgot this tiny detail on the front of the caboose, so I'm going to add that. And then on the inside, I decided to add a Merry Christmas sentiment. This is from the same caboose die set. And I forgot to mention that there are some exclusive items in the card kit, which would be the stamps, stencils, paper, and ephemera, but all of the dies are available for separate purchase, and I did order a restock for the dies because we are very close to selling out of the card kit, and once the kit is sold out, I will not be restocking it. So I anticipate that the boxes will probably be gone by Black Friday, if not on Black Friday. So if you are interested, I would definitely grab one. There are some amazing exclusive items that we'll get to in this video. And I will link the whole box as well as the individual items in the description below. All right, so there you can see how the card opens. And I don't know why I didn't show it on camera, but these do stand upright very well for display. All right, next up, we're going to use the 2 stamp sets from the kit. So I'm going to start with the train that has the trees in the banner. And I was at my mom's house and I didn't have any of my usual inks. However, the only inks that I own are Distress Oxide inks, and I do think actually dye inks are better for this technique. So it ended up working out well, and I was able to find 3, I think these are Spectrum Noir blues, and I just created a gradient with the background stamp using those inks. At first I used 3, but I really only needed to use 2, so I will stamp this out 3 times for the best coverage. Also, this is the first time using the stamps, so they weren't conditioned, but I would say 3 is the perfect number for that background. And it's really nice because it ends up looking like a ink blended ombre, but really it is just the background stamp. And then you can see that the outline stamp perfectly fits inside. So I just stamped that out with black ink. It's really nice to have a different colored background from the outline image. Otherwise it would have just been a black sky, which still would have been pretty, but I think the colorful backgrounds are what makes this stamp so unique. All right, so for the second stamp, I will be using some more sunset colors. So this is red to yellow. Again, dye inks, I think these ones are Altenew. And there are some coordinating stencils in the card kit, and I do feature them in a live, but for these cards, I'm going to Copic color the images. But the stencils are really nice. It only takes about 10 minutes to completely color the whole image. All right, so I think I did that one maybe 4 times. And here is the finished background. I love that. Now I'm taking the outline image and just laying it over those white spaces. I am using a positioning tool here. That is definitely needed for these 2 stamps. And this is a train image going over a bridge. Actually, when I finished this, I felt like I should have probably did the sunset colors on the other set and the blues on this one. But that circle at the top could be a sun or a moon. When I was designing it, I pictured it more as a moon. It's still pretty nonetheless. All right, and it's just so satisfying getting that outline stamp perfectly centered within that background. Originally, I wanted the background to be a stencil, but I wasn't able to add the cute little stars and snowfall. It was just too detailed to be a stencil, so the next best option was to make it into a background die. And if you like this type of stamp, please let me know. I'd love to make more of them. It was challenging to design these, but now that I figured it out, I could definitely make more. So I do have the caps of the Copic markers that I'm using on screen. For most of the images, I used only 2 markers. I think for the trees, I end up using 3. And again, you can use the stencils to color these in. I have a video on that. I just really love the look of shading with markers, and it had been a long time since I've colored, so that's what I opted to do for these 2 designs. So again, I'm working on cards 4 and 5 simultaneously. I figured if I'm going to pull out all the inks and the markers, I might as well stamp out both of the stamped images. And by the time everything is cut out, it is perfectly sized to go on an A2 card or in the center of that ticket die that I showed at the beginning of the video for card number 1. So instead of having all that Polar Express text and the train, you can instead put these stamped rectangles in the center. And I will have another video where I create vintage tags with that Polar Express ticket and these stamp sets. And in the video where I use the stencils with the stamps, I also share how to use the ticket die with it. So I like that there's some different options with these 2 stamps. And as I mentioned, the stamps and coordinating stencils are exclusive to the kit. All right, so I decided to make my train red. I am coloring at 4 times the speed. And I think in total, both images took about 30 minutes to color in and then 10 minutes to stencil. So you can save some time there. If you are going to use the stencil, I do recommend dye ink. So in my live video, I'm not huge into stenciling. It's not a technique I go for, and so I'm still learning it. And so I opted to use the stencils with Distress Oxide inks, and it worked okay. It ended up, because there's that pigment property in oxides, it kind of covered my original black outline. So if you're going to use oxides, leave your stamped image in your MISTI in the same spot so that after you're done coloring or stenciling, you can then re-stamp the outline to give it that bold black outline. But I didn't do that, so that's something I learned. Otherwise, to avoid your outline kind of disappearing, you can use dye inks. So all right, I'm down to the final couple images. The banner I'm going to leave white, but I'll add a little bit of shading around the edges. Just to give it a little bit of dimension. And I'm using warm grays for this. On the outline top and bottom of the banner, I will use a red marker. And that finishes off the first stamp. So for the second one, I'm using some of the same colors. So I'll start with the trees, and these trees have snow on them, so I'm trying to avoid those areas to leave those white. So while I'll color, I'll talk a little bit about our plans for 2026 for Scrappy Tales. A lot of people have been asking what shows I'll be attending next year, and I still have to be approved for them. I don't know yet, but I should know by the end of November. So I will have a post on the Scrappy Tales blog, and I'll post it on Instagram and social media with a list of the shows that we will be attending next year. Obviously, we have our crafty cruise in January. We do still have a few cabins left. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. And otherwise, that's pretty much it. We'll have our usual collections. The deluxe card kits have been very popular. We did it obviously with the Polar Express box, but also for our traditional birthday collection earlier in the year. So I think we're going to do that again. So I think our Valentine's collection will be another deluxe box with some exclusive items inside, and it'll be a little bit smaller. And for Black Friday this year, we're going to be doing something a little fun. I thought it would be nice to do some lives during the week of Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And each day that I go live, there will be a new doorbuster that's only for that day. We'll have our usual Black Friday sales too, but I thought, to kind of make room for new collections that are coming out next year, that we have to get rid of some of our older products. So we'll be putting doorbusters on very specific items, and those items I will feature in a live every day to show you the tutorial of how they're made and give you some ideas. So I will have more information on that after my Christmas tunnel collection launches. This train I'm going for traditional black, again with my warm grays. I love adding shading to black and white. I used to think when you're coloring white that you just wouldn't add any color, you would leave the white cardstock showing. And for black, I always thought it would just be solid black, but adding a little bit of shading to black and white makes a huge difference. And we'll add some red accents to the train. And then for the bridge, I'm going to use some shades of brown. Here I'm making my moon into a sun now with some yellow markers. I think this would be pretty also with some maybe blues and pinks, so it looks more like a morning dusk type sky. I'm choosing some random bricks to fully color in on the bridge. And then that finishes off the second stamp. I'm just going to darken up some areas. Here is the other stamp. And I'm just going to use my trimmer to cut those out. For the red and orange design, I left a white outline. And for the blue, since I had some bleeding outside the area, I just decided to cut that to the edge. Using some scrap cardstock, I'm going to layer some pieces behind these stamped images to help them stand out. I think I add I add 3 behind each panel. And this is a good alternative to foam tape. I have tons of heavyweight white scraps that I go to for this. I am going to mat these onto some black cardstock, and again, you would just add these to a card base. I will not. I will glue these onto a board later on, so I left them. And these white pieces are trimmed a little bit smaller to make it easier to line up behind. This one I'll mat first on white and then on the black. I like the white and black borders. Then to finish them off, I'm just going to accent both of them with some clear crystal gems, and that pretty much finishes my 4th and 5th card. Here are some close-ups, and I also inserted an image of these stamps colored with the stencils and glued onto the ticket die that I mentioned. All right, moving on, we're going to create the train ornament from the card kit. I'm going to use the train passengers and the train ornament for this design. I did all of my die cutting off camera. And again, I copied the colors that are on the train ornament packaging. Those images are there to help you kind of get started with our different die sets. So I have 2 solid green trains, 2 L-shaped pieces, 1 of those long tabbed pieces, and then all of the layering pieces. The green pieces are all cut from 100-pound cardstock. I really like having heavyweight ornaments, and I have collected all of my ornaments through the years, and I still hang them up on my tree. So if you use heavy cardstock, they will last a lifetime if you take care of them. So I wanted the back of my train to be red, so that's why I kind of paper pieced or cut away the right side of this red piece, and then I'll just glue it on top of the green. And you're going to want to decorate a front-facing train and a backwards train. I know it looks kind of strange now, but most of the images when die cut are the same front and back, such as this window and the tires and the light on the train. I think the only thing that's truly backwards is that piece in the front, that grill, and some of the teeny tiny details. So if you are cutting with glitter cardstock, which you can see that I did do that, just remember for the backwards facing train, you might need to cut from the back side of your glitter paper. Oh, actually, I didn't copy the packaging exactly. I think that's going to be a card later on that I will share in the video. But very similar. And this train is a little bit smaller than the one I showed earlier in the video. However, it does still work well with the caboose. So if you want to also turn your cabooses into ornaments, you can do that using the same insert piece that's included in this die set. You can also use it with the larger A7 train if you want bigger train ornaments. I just like the smaller size for ornaments. I think they look better on a tree. This also looks great on an A2 card as the focal point, and my last card in this video, I will show it on a 5x7 card. So and if you purchased our truck ornament from last year, the way to create the ornament part is exactly the same. And I will slow down the video to show that. But I do also have a live on this train ornament. The lives are great if you are looking for tutorials that are done in real time, that are not super sped up. And I've really been enjoying doing lives. It's such a fun way to interact with our followers. I always do giveaways. And generally, I will announce when I go live the day before, so you can follow me on social media for that. We have a Facebook group, too, that I do regular announcements on, and it's a great place where you can share your projects that you've created with Scrappy Tales and see additional inspiration. So I know I'm kind of going through this very quickly. It's just because this video is so long. Again, if you want to see this train done in slow-mo, check out that live. I did use lots of pretty glitter cardstock for this train. I went with traditional colors. You can make these stripes candy cane. I think that would be cute. I do that later on. But I'm working on both of them at the same time. Just making sure to add the elements on the right train backwards. So now I'm down to the tiniest of details. Whenever I paper piece, I always start from largest to smallest. I know some of these dies that we sell might seem intimidating and difficult to figure out the pieces, but when you go from largest to smallest, it becomes very obvious what everything is. And I try my best to make the layering pieces look exactly like the engraved lines on the base. So I know a lot of people have been asking for layering guides. I'm going to start creating them in 2026. And the reason we don't include them is because of we're protecting our artwork. We don't want anything to be stolen from us. And so for layering guides in 2026, you will have to email me and ask for them, just because, like I said, we're protecting our artwork. I do illustrate every single product that I sell in my shop, so we are trying our best to avoid any copyright infringement that sadly goes on in this industry, and I'm just being completely honest. And that's why we really haven't included layering guides in the past, and it's also why we don't show all of the different images that you get in a die set. We just show you the completed image. This just helps that if our artwork gets stolen, that they cannot figure out the exact dimensions or individual pieces that are in a set. And it's really sad that this happens, but there are ways to protect the artwork, and those are just some of the ways that we can. So I hope you understand that that's why we haven't done layering guides in the past, but I do know that many of you would really appreciate them. So 2026, if you are interested in a layering guide, just email me and I will send that to you. All right, so again, you will need a backwards facing snowman and front facing. So I will create 2 of those. I'll create the second one off camera. This little guy is from the passenger window set. You have 4 options, 4 characters. I really think the snowman is the cutest from that set, so that's what I went for. Here's my other one. I end up adding the longer branched arms on both sides of him just to fill that window. This is a little bit of a wider window than the other train set, so I think having the longer branched arms on both sides looked better. So that's what I'm doing here. And my train is pretty much done. So now we have to create the center part that turns it into an ornament. Okay, so I have my 2 green L pieces, and I have this long tabbed piece that I'm adding double-sided tape to. All right, so I'm also going to add double-sided tape to the tabs on this long piece. And these will wrap around that L shape. All right, so I'm taking an L and I'm taking that long piece and adding it to the bottom behind the L. And then I'll take another L, flip it so that they line up, and attach the other tab to the inside of the other L. So that just closes off the bottom, and now we're going to close the top and the sides with this piece. So I'm just reinforcing the score lines. I'm going to fold them all down. And I'm going to start with the long end to close the right side of the L. First, I'm going to reinforce the horizontal score lines now. Then I'll take the tape off, and I do one side at a time. So I'm starting with the long one, attaching those 2 L's, sandwiching the glue tabs in between. Then I'll move on to the next panel. Then I'll fold this one down and close the next angle. Then I'm going to sandwich this piece inside. and then this last piece. Now what I should have done was cut or use a hole punch at the top of the L to string up my ornament string, but it's totally fine if it's already closed like this. I'm just going to take a pokey tool and poke a hole through the top as centered as I can get it. Okay, now I'm going to take some elastic cording. This happens to be a red shiny color. I did knot it at the bottom and created a loop. And then I'm just adding loads of glue to the knot as well as the hole that I created and pushing it through. And then I'm going to let that dry for about 30 minutes off camera. And then that will basically be the ornament part. And then all I have to do is glue my front train to the front of the L. And then I'll flip it around and glue my second train on the back. And that's pretty much it. So you can use this same L piece inside the caboose. You will have to trim it because the caboose is a little bit smaller, and you can use it with the big train that I showed earlier. All right, after I let that dry, I will also add a couple wood beads to the top here. I'm just adding some more glue because this tried to keep popping open as I was gluing my trains on. But the wood beads add a lot to these ornaments. I love adding beads to any paper ornaments that I create. So every year I pull these out. I chose a red and green. And from the top of the loop, I'm stringing those beads on. I'm also going to add a little bit of glue to the base of that green bead to help it stay in place. Again, you're going to want to allow for some drying time. Now, if you strung up your loop before that L was assembled, this would be a lot easier, but as long as you let the glue dry, these beads will stay in place. So here you can see I'm just laying it up against my tripod. This completes my ornament. Here's another one that I created for TikTok. If you'd like to see that, you can follow me on TikTok, Scrappy Tails Crafts. All right, so for my next design, I wanted to use the lights from the Caboose Tree add-on as well as the elf dies included in the kit. So I am creating a string of lights. I will be doing offsetting a silver glitter and a red mirror, kind of creating a candy cane string of lights. And these lights are perfectly wide enough to go on the center of your caboose pop-ups. I will end up cutting this string of lights apart. I wanted 2 of them at the top and a single row at the bottom. I will be creating a 5x7 card, and I decided to decorate my elves the same way that they're shown on the pattern paper. That way everything is cohesive, and again, I don't have to think too hard about the colors. All right, so that is done. I'll set that aside, and I am going to create all 3 elves. All of them, their base I cut from a glitter green cardstock, so the base is always the majority color that shows. So on all 3 elves, their outfits show the most. So now I will start with the female elf. I added her skin tone and her hair. And I did group the dies together based on color. So for her facial features, her face and her ears will be cut together. For the scarf and the white accents in the hat and the dress are in the same set. And you're not going to have like 20 individual pieces when you go to die cut these elves. So you can see this trim around the dress and the hat, as well as the ball on the hat. Those are all grouped together on the same die. And they're grouped only for the female elf, and then there's a grouping for the other two male elves. That way it's easier to keep track of where everything goes. All right, so the die even includes the stripes on the scarf. This is completely overkill. You do not need to add the stripes, or you can use a red gel pen for this. That might be easier. I just love all the tiny details, and for me, paper piecing is my therapy. There's even some stripes on her socks that I'm adding now. As well as the hat. And you can see all the stripes are grouped together. And I oftentimes leave those itty bitty pieces inside the cardstock if I can, so that I don't lose those tiny pieces. And you can see on the top right, I like to use clear bins. In fact, I sometimes will prep 3 or 4 cards before I start assembling them, and those bins are super nice to keep everything organized. And those are actually 4x6 photo bins. And I get mine from Amazon. I know some other companies have their own version. Some of them have trays. They're all really great. All right, now I'm adding the fine liner details to her face, and that finishes off my female elf. So now I'm going to show the other two. So I'm pulling out all the pieces for my next elf. You can see I already sorted them. All the pieces that go with each elf. And again, the base is glitter green. You can see that each elf is doubled up with white cardstock behind so that they're a little bit more dimensional. But here I'm starting with all the white pieces for this elf. Again, they're all grouped together, which is very nice. I'm going to give him some red pants. Again, following the elves that are on the pattern paper, as well as how they're decorated on the packaging. These elves are also perfectly sized to coordinate with the pop-up train and caboose. This guy looks like he's actually sitting, and in my showcase video I show him sitting on one of the caboose ledges, which is super cute. You can also have him sitting on a present. Now with the fine liner, and that completes my second elf. Look how cute he is. I love that glittery green cardstock. So now we just have this guy left. And I will just take the pieces directly from my bin. So believe it or not, this card actually took me the longest because there's just so many layers on these elves. You could definitely opt to just put one on a card. In fact, one of them would look great on an A2 card, but I was looking to create an A7, so I ended up using all 3 of them on one card. All right, so I'm down to the final details for this little guy. He even has some bells on his shoes. And again, you do not need to add every single piece unless you want to. And a lot of these small details would look great if you have gel pens. But he is done going over his face, and that's really what brings them to life. Here they all are side by side. I ended up giving him some red shorts. I thought that looked a little bit better. And now they're officially done. I have my sentiment also prepped. And now I'm working on a black card panel. This is cut to, I don't remember. It's probably 3 inches by 4 inches, most likely. It's going to be smaller than a 5x7 card panel. Substantially smaller because I do want the pattern paper to show on the edges. Here are my string of lights. You can see that I can only fit 2 at the top, so I'm going to end up chopping it. Maybe I don't. Maybe I leave it as is. But here I'm adding it to my paper and seeing how that looks. Now I'm going to chop it. So I'm happy with the way that looks. I'll go ahead and glue everything down. You can see my string of lights are also doubled up for dimension. All right, I will accent this panel with some gold pearls. A lot of the pattern ends up getting covered up, but I didn't want it to be too busy. So again, I have some black scraps of heavyweight cardstock I'm going to add behind this for a little bit of dimension. I really prefer cardstock over foam tape. Foam tape sometimes is too thick. And this is just nicely fully covered and will go through the mail with now any indents. All right, and that finishes off. I think this is card number 6. And now we're going to do another pop-up. So usually with my 10 card 1 kits, I do all flat cards, but because there were so many dimensional elements in this card kit, I thought it would be fun to do a belly band trifold using some of the pattern paper from the kit. So I cut the plaid from our belly band trifold. I also cut it from heavyweight black. So I'll glue the pattern to the center and then fold up those score lines. And then I will add my left and right wings. I cut those from black as well as some of the pattern paper. I also cut my pull down from heavyweight black, so I will attach that next. I'm using glue on everything, but I highly suggest double-sided tape. This was my last card, and this is really when I started running out of time. I actually didn't finish all the little lights from the string of lights. I had to leave. So now I'm going to add my bridges through the slits. You can see I just fold them in half, add some glue to the bottom, and feed it through the bottom of the pull down. And all of these pieces are included in the belly band trifold, and it's exactly the same as our traditional A7 pop-up trifold. So you can use the pull down from that set if you'd like and create your own trifold with your trimmer. But this has a really fun edge at the top and on the pull down too. So to create the cap, I actually just embossed the pull down, and then I cut it up, and then I can glue it on top. And that's just going to cover up all those bridges. Okay, so now I have a pattern paper. I went with the red snowflakes for the inside, and I'm actually going to use the reverse side on the front that has the trains. Now, I should have realized that for the front, I wanted my trains to line up so that it was one continuous pattern, but I think I ended up using one of the panels on the inside of the card that I needed for the outside, and I was not going to recut the paper, so it is what it is. But just be mindful if you have a continuous pattern and you're using double-sided cardstock, just to separate your front pieces from your inside. So I have another train assembled here. This one is exactly like the packaging, and this is the same train ornament. As you can see, it looks great on an A7 card. I added him to the back bridge, and now I'm going to connect him from the third bridge to the back wall using this connector piece that's included in the kit. You're going to need 3 of those if you're going to decorate all 3 bridges. And there are some cards where I will only decorate 2 bridges, and I'll cut the third one at the front off. But in this case, I'm going to add my female elf to the center bridge along with a tall present, and then on the front bridge I'm going to add some more presents and a teddy bear. So these are the individual packages from that cluster of presents that coordinate with the caboose. You can use the presents individually. I'm going to add the smoke to the top of my train, and that added some nice height. I have some more presents here that I'm adding. Along with my teddy bear, I'm going to give him some eyeballs and a nose. I have my next connector, and this one I'm going to glue behind my elf and stretch her across to the train. And this just helps so that when you pull down, everything will stay upright instead of falling forward or falling backward. For that front bridge, I'm not going to add a connector just because the elements are too short, and those are just easy enough to pull up when you pull down. On the side wings, I'm going to add the tree from the caboose tree add-on, another elf. So these elves are pretty much exactly the same as the 3 I just did. I went with slightly different colors. I gave the girl a red dress and the boys got the same green. I will accent the tree with the garland that's included. There are also ornaments, but I don't think I add those. But I will add a star at the top. And then I felt like the top was kind of bare. So here are my string of lights that I didn't have time to finish. But I think you get the idea. Those will go at the top. Added a few more presents to cover up the rest of that front bridge. And I think this turned out super cute. This one is probably my favorite card out of all the ones that I created. So here I'm going back and forth with those lights, debating if I really need them because I know I don't have time to finish it. But for now, I'll close it up because I at minimum need to finish the front. So now I'm using the reverse side of the pattern with the trains, and again, just make sure that the trains will line up. You can see that this is clearly cut from two different places or parts of the paper. I don't think it's a huge deal. I might fix it later. But for now, it's good. So I cut my belly band from heavyweight black cardstock. You're going to need 2 of these. One of them you'll just fold the score lines down, and the other one you're going to cut the center part between the score lines to close the back. I also cut that belly band from the snowflake paper. I'm going to just trim that center rectangle out and glue this on top. I will also glue another one on the back side. And on this belly band, I'm going to add the Merry Christmas sentiment and my third elf, the one that looks like he's sitting. I thought that was cute that he's sitting on the belly band. And with any trifold, I tend to make the fronts more simple than what's inside, just because most of the time is spent creating the scene inside the card. So just a simple sentiment and the elf there, I think, is all you need. You don't even really need the elf because the paper is so busy on its own. But I had him, I might as well use him. So there we go. There I pulled everything down. This is where I determined that I need stuff at the top. So I'm adding another Merry Christmas to the center panel. And then off camera, I'm going to add the string of lights. I managed to get like halfway through the lights before I had to bolt and drive to California. So here we go. I went with a black string of lights. I think I add 2 on this side and 1 on the other side. I'm not sure. Maybe it's 3 and 2. Now I'm zooming in on those lights. I did green, red, and gold. So I'll finish the rest of those off camera. I'm just going to trim the tails of the lights. And that finishes off card 7, I think, or 8. Who knows? I always lose track when I make these videos. All right, so my next card is pretty simple. I'm going to create an A2 using all 4 characters from the passenger window set. I also cut 4 windows from the train pop-up, and I'm going to double them up with some cream cardstock, and then on top I will add blue. I sped this up quite a bit. And I think this is the final die that I haven't shown the paper piecing on. So I wanted to include that in this very long video. I figured it's already long. Let's just make it longer. So if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, I also tripled up the frames. I really like to have dimension on my cards. So I'll start with the reindeer. He's actually the easiest. He just has a collar and his antlers. I'll also give him a brown nose with my Copic marker. Next we have the elf with his thumbs up. The base I made green. Again, that's going to be his shirt and hat. Next up we have Santa. Then we have our little snowman, and because I already showed him on the train ornament, I did him off camera. I did give him a pink scarf with red stripes. So now I can add these guys to their windows. Here you can see how thick these windows ended up being. Then we just have our little elf. And now they are all finished. I did end up giving the reindeer a green collar. Don't really know why. I think the red was better. I think I wanted green in the adjacent window to match the elf, but that was probably just me overthinking. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the plaid pattern paper. I cut that to 4¼ by 5½. Then I have the opposite side, the snowflake that I'm going to put in the center. And then the season's greetings came from a sentiment from a very old stamp set. I will have it linked below, but you can use any sentiment in the center. You can also use the Merry Christmas that's included in the kit. And then I'm just going to line up my windows at the top and bottom of that sentiment, and that card's pretty much done. I will accent it with some blue snowflake sequins from my stash. So here are my tray of snowflakes. We sold these a couple years ago and they were really popular, so we might bring them back next year. I'll also scatter in some gold pearls. And that finishes off, I believe this is card 9. All right, and for my final card, I'm going to create yet another train, and this time I left the paper piecing in just because the majority of this card is just the train. It's the whole focal point on it. And I did change it up a little bit. Obviously, different colors. I'm kind of going for a candy cane inspired train. So I started with a white base. I'm going to add the red portion in the passenger section, also on the horn of the train. I'm going for white tires this time. And the train ornament includes this adorable little Santa. I hadn't used him yet, so I will add this guy into the window this time. I even added the dots of his eyes. You can do that with a fine liner. And then I'll just glue him into the window and continue on decorating my train. I really like how this one turned out. This would be another cute set to make with the caboose. A little bit similar to the first train set that I made at the beginning of the video, but This one I added more white and less red. I thought about adding those centers in the tires, but I liked how the red looked more, so I took them off quickly. Now we're down to the teeny tiny details, but it's so cute when it's all finished. I think it's worth the time. All right, and then I want to prep a couple packages to fill in the space of this card. So I'm going to glue some bows onto the gifts. And you can see at the top right, I went with the Polar Express from the ticket die. You can see there that I tripled it up so that it pops up from the background. And I cut the snowflake pattern paper to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. I'm going to glue my train to the left side, and my sentiment will go on the top right. Now I'll add my sentiment. I did triple up on my word dies. I really like the font on the Polar Express. I think it's really cute and whimsical. And I did kind of offset my colors to match the train. But that will complete my final card. So I will show all 10 that I created. Let me know which one is your favorite. Again, I will have everything that I used linked in the video description down below. I did add some white snowflakes around the sentiment. So let's go over all 10 cards that I created. If you haven't already seen the unboxing and the showcase video, I will link it. I highly encourage you to check it out because there's even more cards that I created, including some pop-up trains. I love that I had a good mix of A7 and A2. I love how the colors turned out, and congratulations to the winner of the Polar Express box. I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.